Hello lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, welcome back to another video. In a day and age where crossovers are basically commonplace and pretty much expected in just about any medium, I thought it would be fun to go back to one of the first major crossovers with Alien vs Predator. With both the Alien and Predator IPs respectively starting back in the 80s and launching to a level of fanfare that is still going strong to this very day, it might not be surprising that they did end up having a crossover. Dark Horse Comics launched an epic sci-fi crossover in 1989, with it being credited to the artist and editor of the original comic, Chris Warner. So, given its beloved status, it would come as no surprise that the AvP series would get a video game adaptation. In fact, it's had several games from the 90s up until the 2010s. However, for today, I'm actually covering the last mainline console release, with that being Alien vs Predator 2010. There was a phone game that released in 2013, but sadly, there hasn't been any new games in this IP since, and I thought it's been over 15 years, so why not revisit it?
Sir, we're ready to begin.
AvP 2010 was developed by Rebellion and published by Sega, releasing for Windows, PS3 and Xbox 360. However, it was to some lackluster critical reviews, though, as tends to be a case for a lot of hidden gems, it was pretty loved by gamers at the time, as even at the time of release, I recall people talking about how fun the game is. Now, it doesn't mean it's flawless by any means, however, it is a game that gives you pretty much everything you could hope to expect from this franchise. Consisting of 3 different campaigns with wildly different playstyles, it's pretty much going to have something for just about anyone that wants a sci-fi murder romp. Firstly, you have the Colonial Marines campaign, which, as you would expect, sees you using a variety of different guns to dispatch more than your fair share of aliens and the occasional predator towards the end. It plays like a pretty traditional FPS, if I had to compare it to anything. Next up, the Alien campaign sees you playing as Six, a Xeno that is considered to be unique and different to the average alien. But since they're rather young compared to the others, at least from what I understood, they're a little more squishy, at least early on, so you have a bit more of a stealth approach. It's a pretty unique gameplay style, and I can't really think of many games, if any, to compare it to. The only game I can think of is The Darkness, where you have to destroy light in order to stay hidden. However, here I get to play more of a hunter stealth approach, and it's a lot of fun. And finally, we have the Predator. Here we'll be playing as a young blood hunter trying to prove themselves as they rip and tear their way through hordes of aliens and marines, and this allows for a full-blown action power fantasy with some stealth mixed in. You get access to pretty much all the special abilities that you would expect for the Predator to have, and my God, is it cool. I will jump into these campaigns in a bit, however I do want to mention one massive problem I have with the game, or at least you might face with the game, and that is getting it running on modern systems. At least for me, when I was trying to boot the game up initially, I would only get a flashing black screen and then the game would minimize, and it was really damn annoying. Now, this could be because I run a multi-monitor setup, so if you have a single screen and it doesn't do it for you, please let me know in the comment section below just to help anyone else who might want to try this game out. However, if you are running into the issue where it keeps minimizing back down to the taskbar, all you need to do is click the icon and hit Alt-Enter quite quickly when the screen flashes. This will force it into windowed mode, and then you can hit Alt-Enter again to make it go full screen, and it should go to your main monitor. Now, in theory, this should fix your issues, and you should be right to run the game no problems going forward. However, do note it does not like alt-tabbing, so just beware. So with all that boring crap out of the way, let's dive into these campaigns. Starting out with the Marines, you find yourself playing as a Marine only known as the Rookie, in which, along with his squad, he finds himself heading down to a colony planet known as BG-386, after the main ship, known as the USS Marlowe, was blown up by an unknown assailant. As you would expect, things don't go as planned, and shit hits the fan, leading to the Rookie being unconscious while pretty much everyone around him is killed. Thought to be dead, he eventually wakes up and heads out attempting to regroup with any remaining survivors and find a way out of the new hellscape. Now, before I did say that the Marine campaign plays like a traditional FPS, and although that is true, I would say it's more of an action horror experience than just traditional action, as you'll start out with a lot of dark and tight corridors, along with hearing a lot of strange and foreign sounds. In a really nice touch, you don't immediately run into the aliens or any predators. The game takes its time, pacing at your first real encounter, and it's incredibly well done, up until you finally meet the first Xeno. And I say that because sadly, it's kinda generic how the cutscene plays out. It doesn't ruin the experience by any means, but considering how well it was done in Alien Isolation just a few years later, it does leave me wishing we had a little bit more here. The mission structure is pretty straightforward as everything is quite linear throughout the game. Now, that's not a knock on it by any means, as I think it makes it a cohesive experience, but it means a lot of these missions are very predictable as you make your way through the game. It's pretty obvious what you're going to be doing next, and what's coming around the corner. With that said, the Marine campaign does show off pretty much the best this game has to offer both graphically and audibly. However, for the best experience, you are best off playing all 3 campaigns, not just the Marines. The game's lighting and soundscape have aged incredibly well, and it does help that the game got some love from Sega having some DirectX 11 features enabled, making it look really damn good to this day. The textures can definitely be a bit low res in certain parts, do not get me wrong, but once you're playing and in motion, you're not going to notice it at all. The game's audio is still phenomenal. Weapons are punchy, and the Xenos and Predators are fucking terrifying. However, there is one little blip when it comes to the soundscape, and I would say it's the voice acting. It's not bad by any means, but it does feel a little flat compared to games we've had more recently. What makes up for it, however, is the game's exceptional soundtrack, keeping you on edge the entire time you play, making you feel immersed in this game. If I had to criticize anything about the Marines campaign though, it is the fact he has the world's smallest jump. Contrasting this complaint though, the game more than makes up for it with its massive variety of weapons. From the classic pulse rifle that can also shoot grenades, your ever trusty pistol, a shotgun, a sniper rifle, which happens to be my favourite weapon in the game, a flamethrower that's great for those face huggers that can suck a dick, and the smart gun, although you will only get to use that a couple of times throughout for balancing reasons because holy cow is it strong, as it's auto aim as soon as you pull the trigger. You pretty much can't go wrong with any combination of weapons you choose, as you can carry 2 extra weapons along with your pistol, making it 3 in total. Unless you want to grab the smart gun, in which case you have to give up 2 other guns. The game does make one strange choice though, as you don't always carry the exact same weapons into the next level. However, odds are you will find those weapons you wanted pretty quick, so it's not a deal breaker, just a minor annoyance, and I will say that is something that's pretty common with games from this time. I would say for me, the Marine campaign was my second favourite of the 3, and it was probably the longest, taking roughly 2 to 3 hours all up to beat. Up next, we have the Alien campaign. As mentioned, here we play as a xenomorph codenamed 6 after being branded with the number. During their campaign, we'll find ourselves attempting to kill pretty much any and everyone, along with making our way back to the Queen in order to free her from captivity. Given the strength of the weaponry used by Marines and Predators, it becomes pretty apparent that we will need to rely on more stealth and mobility that 6 offers to the player, as we get the ability to climb up and down walls and even go on the ceiling. We can also go through vents and perform stealth kills. Though I didn't mention it before, as a Marine, if you needed to heal, you would use a stim pack. However, when playing as 6, if you need to heal, you have to eat the brains of your victims, which, although very neat, might be a bit too gory for some. Also, the Alien is stupidly fast, allowing for you to dart in and out of battle as needed. Sadly, however, the Alien is probably the most limited of the 3 when it comes to combat, having a light attack, a heavy attack which is typically a tail slash, and the stealth kill that I mentioned before. Thankfully, you can also hiss to try and get Marines to come over to you, which can help you plan your attacks, but it's definitely the most limited. I will mention you can also block incoming melee attacks, but it's only really handful against a few Predator fights towards the end of the Aliens campaign, and as I said, it does feel lacking when it comes to combat. My only real complaint though for its campaign is the length. It is by far the shortest of the 3, taking about an hour to beat. Not that I need it to be a ton longer, but it would have been nice if it was maybe 30 minutes to 45 minutes longer. The gameplay was a lot of fun in action, but it just needed something more. Maybe the ability to play as different xenomorphs, such as a facehugger or a chestburster, or the Praetorian, which is the big giant one that spits acid, although to be fair they all have big heads, so you get what I mean. Overall, it's a solid campaign and I did very much enjoy it, but ultimately it does rank in 3rd for me. Finally, we have what is definitely my favourite of the 3, if you couldn't have guessed, the Predator campaign, being a mix of the heart-pounding action you get from the Marine campaign while having some stealth options like the Xenos. During this campaign, we'll get access to the most iconic abilities and weapons that the Predator is known for, at least up to this point, starting off with the incredibly well-modelled claws, his shoulder laser, the mines, the boomerang-like smart disc, and what I consider his best weapon, the spear. As for abilities, we have the cloak, heat vision for the human targets, electromagnetic vision for xenomorphs, a decoy that allows us to separate Marines so we can take them out one by one, the Predator's version of binoculars allowing you to zoom right in on targets, and finally the super jump allowing you to go to any level surface in range, giving you a different angle of attack and allowing you to engage how you want. It is easily the most free-flowing combat style of the three and honestly feels the most well implemented since it allows you to find your playstyle. Though it could just be me, I will say the Predator also felt a little bit tankier than the Marine or the Alien, allowing for a little bit more of a hectic battle as it really allowed me to lean into the power fantasy of being one of the galaxy's most dangerous hunters. The only real drawback is the fact some of his abilities and weapons require power, meaning you'll need to find batteries or generators throughout the level in order to recharge. It's a minor inconvenience, but it is something worth mentioning. But you will find plenty of these throughout every level. The length of the campaign is pretty similar to that of the Marine campaign, and you could probably debate which one's longer between the two, but I definitely spent more time in the Marine campaign during my time. I've yet to mention the coolest thing about this game and all its different campaigns, and that is the fact they're all running simultaneously, meaning you'll see overlapping moments from different perspectives, and it's really damn cool. Everyone has their own unique goals at play. Not everyone shares those goals of getting off the planet. At least for the human and Predator, they're both trying to stop Carl Bishop Wayland. Even though every character has their own motivations, I found it really enjoyable seeing all three stories intertwine with each other at different key points. It makes it a pretty immersive experience overall, and it rewards you for playing all three campaigns. In the end, I highly recommend this game to anyone who is either a fan of the franchises involved, a fan of action horror games, or just wants a solid experience overall. Sure, it's not the scariest game ever made, or the goriest, but for its time it was pretty brutal, and it still plays really damn well today. It's not flawless by any means, but a lot of the issues with the game seem to be pretty minor outside of getting it running. And for a game you can get for less than $5 on a Steam sale, you could definitely do a whole lot worse. Looking at you, Alien Colonial Marines. So with that, lads, ladies, gents, ladetts, whoever, whatever, that brings us to the end of another video. I hope you enjoyed this little look back at AvP 2010. This game is really fun, and I would love to see this series sort of come back in a big way. I think having 3 different team PvP battles online would be pretty sick. So here's hoping something happens with the franchise going forward. If you enjoyed the video, please consider hitting that like button. If you want to go that extra step, you can hit the subscribe button. And if you want to go that extra mile, you can support me on Patreon, Ko-fi, or on YouTube memberships like these lovely people here. And with that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Stay safe out there. Bye.